We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order, and looking in the room, this is the most folks that we've had at any of our board meetings, so I think we need to have an OEC workshop at every meeting. Where's OEC? Anyway, we'll go ahead. The meeting is called to order. We'll start with roll call. Chief Trowerneck.
Here.
Kevin Guerrero.
Chris Timberlake on his behalf.
Barry Frazier.
Here.
Bill Hartley.
Here.
Pat Mullen.
Here.
Chief McCann.
Here.
Adelina Zendejas.
Here.
Scott Helen.
Here.
Cynthia Gomez. And Cynthia won't be able to make it today. She let me know in advance. And Sheriff Bonner. Okay. And so Sheriff Bonner, I guess no representative today. Okay. Very good. So we do have a quorum, so we'll go ahead and get going. The first item of business is the approval of the June 2014 minutes. Does anybody have any comments or additions to the minutes as written? And if you need a couple of minutes to take a look at it, we can go ahead and do that as well. Comments?
I would go ahead and move for approval.
Is there a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, minutes approved as written. The next item on our agenda is our update. And the FirstNet update, I just have some bullets here, is on July 29th, FirstNet held their first state consultation meeting in Maryland. On July 31st, Maryland released a summary of the initial consultation lessons learned. And did everybody get a copy of that on the board? No? Okay. If we could have that sent to all the board members. I did not thoroughly read it, but I did skip through it really quickly, and it has a lot of good information to prepare us for when we do our state consultation. FirstNet recently hired key positions. I understand now that they have roughly 60 positions now. I do not believe that the contact for California has been hired as of yet.
Correct.
Okay, so I'm looking forward to seeing who that will be. And then August 19th, the FirstNet board approved the Spectrum Management Lease Agreement with the state of Texas, Harris County. And we will have Todd Early from Texas come and meet with us at our next board meeting to kind of talk about what they're doing in Harris County. I mentioned before that I was able to see their LTE system that they have there in their broadband network for public safety. It's very cool. And if this is what we end up with FirstNet, I think we'll all be very happy. So I'm looking forward to him coming out and talking with all of us. And then the FirstNet officials at the New Orleans APCO conference released a request for proposal. Is estimated to be, I'm misreading this. The request for proposal is estimated to be issued early next year, and the state consultation process should help timeline take place. And I think what this is trying to tell me and to tell all of you is that the consultation process has been delayed. And so where we were going to have our consultation process late 2014, we've now been pushed out to early 2015, but then everybody else's time frame has been extended as well. I'm glad about that. What we've been finding is that our town hall meetings have been very, very good, generated a lot of questions, not so much at the meeting, but after the meeting we're getting a lot of really good feedback. So I want to make sure that we continue the next two. We will have several other town hall meetings. One will take place for our 911 group, so I'd like it to be focused on PSAPs. Excuse me. And then I'd like another town hall meeting that focuses on emergency management, and we might be able to combine the PSAP and emergency management piece together. Also, I do want to have a town hall up in our most northern part of California in Humboldt County, where we can actually get a little bit more dialogue going with our more remote locations. So those will be scheduled in the very near future, probably October. We have a lot on our plate, but the town halls, the more we do them, the easier they get. I'm saying that to reassure staff. The more we do them, the easier they get. But we're just finding them to be so valuable. Okay, FirstNet California status update. Michael Boyden.
Good morning. Everybody can see okay? I'm Mike Boyden, and what I'd like to do is, just as Karen mentioned, provide an update of what we've been doing in the education and outreach awareness program that is part of the NTIA's state and local implementation grant program. So we'll look at the plan, refresh your memories on that, talk about some of the recent and upcoming events, maybe just go next level down from what Karen already introduced, and then talk about what happens ahead. Okay, if you recall, last couple meetings we talked about late spring we developed an education outreach plan, and it consisted of a series of waves of outreach as part of executing the grant for getting people to know in California that are involved with public safety about FirstNet. The waves are multi-tiered, and so that within a wave there's opportunities for us to bring folks together, such as in a town hall from the public safety community, but also for us in terms of recurring conferences to go where public safety personnel gather naturally. And then finally, the third tier is developing materials to both hand out during those conferences as well as social media and things like that. We're right now, right in that, well into the execution of that major wave there at the beginning. As we just mentioned, we had a Lakeport Town Hall, we've got a Bakersfield Town Hall, we got 2 more on the books and several more that are about to be on the books, and I'll talk more about those. Some of the things that we've been doing alongside that is at the beginning of this month, there was, or actually the end of last month, there was issued a FirstNet in California survey. This is the, for the board members, you'd seen the survey, several meetings and approved the content, but for the folks that this is new to, there's 3 major areas. The first part is how to use mobile data today. What kind of services are using it for email, using it for internet access, database access. What are your priorities in the future for the types of services you need out of FirstNet? And then how many users are in your domain, your region? That sort of information is critical. So right now we launched the survey, had a webinar at the beginning of the month on how to, as far as implementing it, and folks are filling out their surveys now. Another important thing that's happening this month is why many of you are here, and that's the Office of Emergency Communications Broadband Prep Workshop. We'll let you they'll tell you all about that as they conduct it today. Some of the other things we've been doing is as we roll into the execution of the program, we work at being a learning organization as far as our core team here. And so we've developed right as soon as we had the first town hall, we sat up and actually documented lessons learned. What went well, what went not so well, what should we do therefore in the next town hall. And so as Karen was mentioning, we get better at this, and we literally have looked at things ranging from simply the venue, how should we be oriented to get the best thing for doing the awareness, to what's the content that most resonates with folks, what sort of speakers would support that content. One of the things that I'm excited about is as a result of some of those lessons learned is we've developed a set of themes. So although there's about the same kind of range of material in each of the town halls, each one's going to have a special emphasis in one of the disciplines: fire, emergency medical, law enforcement. We'll talk more about that as we go forward. And then finally, you'd seen the fact sheets and things that have been rooting through. Those are now approved. We're distributing those. The FirstNet in California infographic that's right here on the board here, that's available. And I know some of you folks have actually taken it to some of your field forces and said, kind of talk the talk about what this is all about. What we're hoping is as they go to the town halls and they pick up that sort of material, they bring them back and they end up pinned at the bulletin board at the station, next to the coffee machine, so that there's this persistence of the message. Okay, let's talk a little bit about what's just happened. Last month, as I mentioned, the Lakeport Town Hall was well received. We had over 50 people in attendance in Lakeport, so a lot of people had to come from a ways, and we had as many online as well. There was a good representation across the disciplines, and as a matter of fact, we also had folks like telecom managers who were responsible for radio communications networks. We had folks from National Guard, we had tribal representatives, so it was a good mix of folks. Bakersfield, that town hall happened mid this month, and again, had a similar turnout, which was terrific. This one had that emphasis for the fire service. And one of the things I wanted to point out is in terms of the types of people that are involved in public safety, it was great to see not only law enforcement, emergency medical, but also like the university system. There's lots of folks that are involved in a first response. Both of these are now posted, so if you got people that wish they could have gone but couldn't, you can hit the YouTube links that are here and be able to see them for yourself. Talked about that as being that first tier. The next tier was going to conferences where people gather. We did a couple I just want to highlight this month. One was the San Bernardino County Operational Area Coordinating Council, the OACC. This was in Rancho Cucamonga. The OACC is the group of emergency managers. There's about 24 of them representing the cities and towns within the county. The interesting thing to me on this too is that not only did we have the usual suspects, emergency managers from state and local government, we also had folks like the commercial, and we had Southern California Edison, had nonprofit such as Red Cross. All those are folks that are going to be critical as we move out this network in terms of having access and use of it. In Northern California, Hector and I, where are you, Hector? He's probably out there, man, in the booth. We went to the NAPCO, the Northern California APCO meeting, and that was also well attended. This is a picture of the folks there. The nice thing about that is Scott Andrews, the NAPCO president, actually had done a president's message the month before talking about the Lakeport conference, and so it was nice, kind of set us up. And we were the keynote before lunch, and I hadn't intended, after we gave our presentation, to open up to questions and answers because I figured they'd want to just line up for the food. And now they just spontaneously burst into questions. We probably answered questions for about 20 minutes. So there's a lot of interest, particularly with this technical crowd, about what's going to happen, what happens next. One of the main topics that was on their agenda was the Western Region APCO meeting. This happens here in Sacramento next April. Now with NAPCO, or with APCO International, you kind of, they revolve around the country in terms of venues year over year. Well, this one, after this one, it'll be several years before another one comes to the West Coast or kind of the Western region. So this is a critical one, and I know Scott's talked about wanting to get with you, Karen, and make sure that we have a good presence there as well.
Yeah, we have a meeting, I think, later this week.
Okay.
To start the planning process.
And that's not too soon, because April's going to turn out like before you know it. And we do expect a good turnout, and a lot of your folks go to APCO as it is, and we'll want to be doing the same thing on the Southern California side. Next month, those two that are scheduled on the books is Northern California's Fairfield, Southern California's Santa Ana. The themes are emergency medical, telemedicine, and then emphasis will be law enforcement in Southern California. And there's our own Pat Mallon, speaking of Bakersfield there on the right. Okay, let's look ahead. Well, any looking ahead has to involve the road to FirstNet that's on the infographic there, and so we'll couch it in that. Karen's alluded to a number of things that are happening right now. At the APCO meeting in New Orleans, the acting general manager, T.J. Kennedy, mentioned, as Karen described, that they're staffing up now. They're got their network engineers working what they call the Comprehensive Network RFP. This is the time they're putting together. Next year will be the time they'll be implementing that and getting the responses back from vendors. And that's critical because they can't really get, this is the roadmap to their business model. You can't get the business model done, answer the question, how much will it cost us, until you find out how much it's going to cost them in terms of the vendors. One of the things that'll be happening at the, as part of this process is the consultation and design process, that 46-step process. One of the first items of that is the optional meeting with OEC. We're having that here today. We'll be working on our readiness checklist, as Karen mentioned, to get then, once we submit that materials, we'll be getting in line for our consultation meetings probably in the spring. Right now, as mentioned, Maryland had theirs. Minnesota's up next. October is, let's see, it'll be Oregon and Washington. So you got to think there's 56 states and territories. This is going to take some time to get these accomplished. I want to skip down the road. We'll have plenty of time to get this future and get all the way to 2022. Because want to just point out that by the Act, by 2022, the network has to be substantially in operation. And here's some of the reasons why. At this point, the OAC comes in and evaluates FirstNet's performance. The Treasury takes back any monies that they haven't spent. So they've got to have their active year and actually been using that money to develop. And finally, the FCC, the 10-year lease is up on the license spectrum, and so they have the opportunity to renew it or not. So there's just a lot of emphasis and energy up front that's going to need to take place to make this a thing that becomes something continuous and not just something that rolls over. You know, back when the Act was enacted in 2012, 2022 seemed like a long time away. It's not seeming like that anymore. And so all these things that are happening up here are real critical to keep us rolling. Okay, for the board, again, we thank you for that first one, which is encouraging folks to attend the town halls. Please continue to spread that word. If at all possible, if you can get folks to attend in person, terrific. If you can't, they can attend remote, online. So keep getting that word out to them. Make sure the representatives that have been assigned are filling out their surveys. That also is that critical part. When we get into those consultations and design iterations, this will be the basis that we'll be building from to understand what it is we need. And then the third thing was mentioning that conference reoccurring types of activities. We've got a stakeholders list that includes a list of conferences, but what we'll be looking to for help from you is to take a look at it and say, well, which ones are we missing? Which ones do you feel are the ones that your folks gather at so that we make sure that they get the word? With that, any questions?
Yeah, Mike?
Yeah.
Back to the 2022 slide, and in some ways it's, I guess, not that far away, but in other ways it's kind of a long time from now. Too long to wait for this network. Do you have any sense of what California is going to be seeing before 2022, or is that really kind of a date that we could be having to look at for network build out here in the state?
Yeah, let's do I have a minute? I can.
Well, I just kind of want to make sure I understand that 2022.
Yeah.
That the network has to be up and running substantially, and you know how that substantially is kind of a broad term. So I don't know if that, I don't know how they could leave California out and not call it substantially. So
That's true.
I believe we have to be built out well before that. California basically is the anchor for the West Coast, and FirstNet already knows that. So I'm not looking at that as anywhere at all of the date California should be looking at getting this built out. It's more of a nation type of a date. And Mike, I don't know, that's just my opinion.
Yeah, no, this is the end date and not the start date.
Right.
And as you mentioned, I kind of skipped over this section, which probably would have answered that question, is that as soon as they get the RFP out, they're going to build the network core, and then they'll start doing the radio access networks for each of the states. Where you lay in that line of states will vary, but there's obviously going to be a whole lot of them done first. And one of the biggest things we have in California right now is what's happening in LA RICS. I mean, that will be the largest instantiation, and staying on schedule, that's going to be done next year. Yeah. So that'll be a good stake in the ground.
Well, and LA RICS is larger than most of the East Coast states themselves. So I know that just having that done, because they're looking at the smaller states as they start to roll out, and then with LA RICS on the West Coast, I really think that puts California in a really good spot to get this built out quickly.
Yeah, I really value the fact that having that built in our area will give us that whole lessons learned thing. We'll know what works and what doesn't work and be able to move things out, let's say in the Bay Area, quicker than without it. And you got to remember, as Karen mentioned, there's, how many sites you got that you're planning to roll in LTE?
It's a little over 200, about 220.
Okay, what Karen mentioned about the first one that turned up in Harris County, Texas, that was less than 20 right now. So we're talking tenfold, what we're really looking at here when that gets built. Other questions?
Can I just have a quick follow-up? So getting us into the queue, for consultation beginning first quarter 2015, do you feel pretty good that that's going to get us, if not the top of the line, but close to the first third of states going through?
We were queued up the latter part of 2014. They're the ones, FirstNet moved the schedule out. So it pushed out everyone. It wasn't that California said, I want a delay. FirstNet delayed everybody. So in doing that, we were pushed out to 2015. My goal would have been to stay on track of 2014, but it was not something we could control. And we would have been prepared. So what this does now, based on their delay, gives us even more time to gather more information.
Thank you.
Well, actually, that's a good point. Is that doesn't mean we can't be preparing ourselves, and that's why we're here today. One of the things I didn't go into here is I mentioned in passing that 46-step process, that iterative design, where they develop, up to at least 3 different designs. Well, Rich Reed, who just joined FirstNet from the OEC, he is in charge of that process, and he says it's literally like doing 56 proposals, network proposals, because each time they do one of those, they're having to create a design, and they're going to have to do that multiple times. So it's going to be a lot of work just to get to this point here, which is where the governor has the opportunity to look at the final design and say, we're in or we're not. Anything else? All right. Thank you very much.
The other item I wanted to mention as we continue to look at the outreach is we have a presentation that we've all been kind of using, a basic presentation that we've had for the office. What I'd like to do is extend that out to the board, have everyone review, and then if you're ever asked to give a presentation, we'll all be having the same message as we push it out. So we should be able to get that to you this week. Yeah, because it's done, and it's what we've been using. And then moving on to the next item is unfinished business. And part of what I wanted to talk about is that we have our technical advisory committee and our tribal advisory committee that have not met yet. We're creating introductory welcome packets for all the committee members. The packets will be sent out in September, and the committee meetings will start no later than the first part of October. We want to make sure that we get all the committee members briefed up on what FirstNet is, so they know what their roles are, and then be answering questions to make sure when we start our committee meetings, everybody has the same level of knowledge on FirstNet as we go forward. So I wanted to have this on unfinished business so everybody kind of knows how we're moving. And Sue, I'm sorry, that was yours. Did you have anything to add?
No, staff are working on creating those packets, and we hope to get those out, in the next few weeks.
Okay, and then this is kind of a scaled down meeting because we do have the workshop. So are there any items for future meetings? We do have Texas coming out at the next meeting. Were there any other items? I have a couple that I'd like to at least toss to the board. I'd like to be able to have a couple of the companies who are starting to make actual FirstNet handheld devices come and bring some and talk to us about it.
I brought one, so I'll pass it around.
Okay, and so we can actually start looking to see what's going on. I know this one particular company, and I've been told of a couple more in California, so we have some time to have them come to our October meeting so we can start looking at what the devices will look like. And then what I'd like to do also at the next board meeting is, now that we know that FirstNet has delayed the consultation process, what I would like, and this will go back to our staff to put together for the board to talk about, is to put together our milestones in meeting what we need to do to get to the consultation. So we actually have a very detailed roadmap on our process to get there. I believe we have one in the office. I think we need to put this out for all the board members to see.
Sounds good.
Anything else?
Can I just say a couple of words about
Absolutely.
this? And then I'll pass it around, you can see it. So this is a company called Sonam Technology, who they have their headquarters in San Mateo, California, in the Bay Area. We've met with them a few times. They have, this is still a mock-up. This is not a working model, but they do have working models that run currently on the AT&T network for smartphones. But the special thing, about, and you'll see it's hardened for public safety, and they have specs where if they've dropped it from large distances and put it in extreme heat and done some things to test it. But the good thing about this is it does have the dual chipset. So if we had a FirstNet network here today, this smartphone would be capable of roaming back and forth from AT&T to the FirstNet network back and forth. And my understanding is they will be also bringing out a phone on the Verizon service early next year. So I think this is important because as we get closer to FirstNet, but we don't have FirstNet, and you're looking to purchase smartphones for your staff, it might be good to look at some of these because they can, they will be immediately upgradable. You won't have to replace them when FirstNet does come along. I've been told that the price point for this phone is about $650. So kind of comparable to a phone that's not attached to a 2-year plan in the commercial world.
Hey Barry, how do you spell that company name?
SONIM.
Said it was very
And as Karen said, we'll try. I think we will try to have them come and do a more formal presentation next time.
Yeah, I've already talked to him. I didn't talk to him about a presentation, but I did talk to him. And in public safety communications, we have our special projects group, and they're the group that actually test all of the equipment that we use, CHP, CAL FIRE, transportation, fish and game, on and on, within the state agencies, public safety organizations. And so they've agreed to give us a few of these and have it go through our rigorous public safety hardened type tests to see how they fare. And then we can also start looking at, and do they really need to meet the same standards as a radio? Because I think the expectation might be they do, but maybe they don't. But if they don't, what standards do they need to meet? So it just starts opening up the dialogue and actually gets us involved in having that conversation with the companies.
I'd like to add that LA-RICS probably within the next 2 to 3 weeks will be issuing an RFI for devices. We'll be more than happy to share any of the results of that. We've met with our main contractor. They did a show and tell for us. It's somewhat limited, and we want to expand expand the options. We have met with Sonim as well. But there are others that are out there, other vendors that are out there, particularly for the routers, the in-vehicle routers. And so that should be on the streets probably not later than mid-September, and we'll share the results of that when we come back.
So we could probably look forward for that like December or early 2015?
Yes.
That'd be perfect.
Yeah,
Perfect timing.
we need to buy our devices and have them ready to hit the streets probably not later than June.
From what you guys are seeing, are these ready to be radios with push-to-talk and things, or is it still out there?
The problem with the Band 14 is LTE only, and they don't really have voice over LTE refined yet. So the voice on your telephone, when you use your Verizon phone, your voice, your dial-up, your telephone calls are actually on 3G. They're not on 4G. So the big issue that FirstNet's trying to deal with is coming up with a device that will offer voice, dial-up voice, as well as the data on 4G. So the push was to come up with a device that would have voice over LTE, and then push-to-talk voice over LTE, and that's a ways off, particularly for critical communications. That's just not there.
Do we know if FirstNet has identified a standard for operating system?
I don't believe they have.
Because my only curiosity is, as devices like this come out in the project that is going on at LA-RICS, is if you buy a phone prior to FirstNet rollout that doesn't have a compatible operating system or is a proprietary operating system, if you can't download the FirstNet apps to it, you now have a $600 device that you can't use.
Correct. However, it will be open standards and open architecture, so the interoperability should be there. I know that FirstNet is not looking toward any proprietary systems.
I'm kind of thinking more along the lines of the phone maker having a proprietary
iPhone,
system.
Yeah,
Android.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I believe this, as well as the Motorola's Android. We have not found an iPhone that will offer a chipset in 14, Band 14, so Apple's got to get on board real quick.
Yep.
For the
So, but I
iPhone
think
number.
those conversations will be really good to have at the next meeting with the folks that come. And I have seen the Motorola version when I was in Texas at the Harris County demo. I like them. I mean, I thought they felt and looked like public safety grade, but I'm also not out on the street using them all the time. So it'll be really interesting to get some feedback from first responders.
Sounds good, thank you.
Okay, so any other items?
One quick thing. Last time I mentioned briefly about the FirstNet Public Safety Advisory Committee. And I am a member of the committee. I just wanted to briefly introduce Bill McCammon, who I think is in the audience. Bill is on the PSAC Executive Committee, one of the 5 leaders of the Public Safety Advisory Committee. Bill is formerly Alameda County Fire Chief and currently runs the East Bay Regional radio system there for Alameda and Contra Costa County. I just wanted to introduce him and again offer up that we can take advantage of our PSAC membership and somehow provide information or support for CalFRN and somehow tie into the work that we're doing with FirstNet and CalFRN. And I haven't quite figured out how we can best do that, but there is that opportunity, and we may have some good information that is coming out of the advisory committee that we could share with CalFRN.
What I would like to do, if you're willing, is to have this a standing item on our agenda. And then you'd be able to brief everyone on a bi-monthly basis. And if nothing's transpired, then that would be the brief out. If a lot of things have happened, then that way give us all a chance to know exactly what's been going on. Would that be acceptable?
I think that would be great. And I'll certainly be here when I can. Bill can join in at meetings when he's available, and we'll, between the two of us, try to keep you briefed on a regular basis on the activities of the PSAC.
I think that would be excellent. Thank you, Bill, also. Hey, any other agenda items for future meetings? Okay. And then does anybody have any announcements? Okay, public comments? I think we are pretty close on time. So with that, I will go ahead and adjourn the meeting today, and our next meeting is in 2 months on
October 1st.
October 1st. Wow, that's fast. October 1st.
LA Ritz area.
Yeah.
That's in Santa Ana.
Depending on how many folks we anticipate, we have a large conference room, but it's not the size of this. So if we're expecting a large number, I probably would prevail upon the Sheriff's Department for use of their media conference room.
What we can do is send out a notice and then ask folks to RSVP so we can kind of get a head count.
That would be great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other comments? Okay, with that, the meeting's adjourned, and I think we now have to rearrange the room for the workshop.
Yep.
So thank you, everybody.